Welcome to Ponchatoula Live, the show where we make it easy for you to connect with the people of Ponchatoula. I'm your host, Parker Layrisson, and today I've got a fantastic guest. This is someone that I've been trying to get on the show for at least a year. She's one of the busiest people in our community. She's a very active and dedicated public servant, and so her schedule is packed, and it's tough to get her booked. But I'm glad to say we finally have Rose Dominguez, our local school board member, here on the show. So with no further ado, Rose, welcome to the show.
Hi, Parker. Thank you so much. I'm glad our schedules worked out today.
I am too. And, you're one of my favorite people in town. I always love to see you and catch up with you and your entire family. And anyway, thank you for making time with us here today. I know you're busy. You got a football game tonight. You're like Wonder Woman. You're always in action. And I know that, your time is precious. So thank you for being here. Why don't we kick things off with you just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, well, I'm Rose Dominguez. Well, Rose Quade Dominguez. I grew up out in Beatico. I'm a lifelong resident, of course, Tangipahoa Parish. My mom and dad were very volunteer advocates our whole lives, and kind of learned that service from them. They were the people who started the Beatico Community Center with another bunch of people out there, and they're very active, and I just learned the service of that. My mother was involved in Girl Scouts, which I became a Girl Scout leader, and she was also PTA president. And
oh wow, I didn't know
became a PTA president.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So I just learned the love.
Your parents are really well respected and beloved around here. It's neat to hear about their experience as public servants and community servants, and you've clearly followed in their footsteps.
Yes.
What was it like being a kid in their house? Because, I just know them as once they were hit like grandparent mode, and, they're so nice. But what was it like being their little girl growing up out there in Beatico?
It was good. My dad was pretty strict. My mom worked out. She was a secretary for Ronald Curette in Hammond for like 30 years. And so she was a businesswoman, but she was also a volunteer. My dad, one funny story I remember, when we didn't have TV, but when we finally got TV when I was little, my dad got the opportunity to watch the TV first. It's not like today, the parents watch the TVs first. Right. I do remember that as a kid. He was like, come home from work and he had the TV.
So it's not like today where everybody's got their own individual screen and they can just watch right there.
You just watch what your parents wanted to watch.
You had to wait for daddy to finish watching the news or whatever before you could get in there. It's funny. My dad always tells a story that, TV was very new to the town whenever he got it. But of course, it came out and it was black and white. But he said it was a really big deal when they put this color filter on the front.
Yep.
And you remember that? It was blue up top of the sky and green for the grass in the bottom. And it's so funny that, these days when we're looking and, our iPhone has 1 million megapixels or whatever they're called, it's funny to think about that.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. So you are obviously a country girl growing up out there in Beatico. What was that like? What did y'all do for fun? What was your experience like?
Now, I would never do it, and I wouldn't let my children do it, but we used to ride our bicycles all the way from Beatico down Traino Road all the way to Lee's Landing and go swimming in the creek.
Whoa!
And now you would never do that, but that's a long way from Beatico to Lee's Landing. We used to do that. We'd ride our bikes around. Everybody on the block knew each other, and in fact, one of my very best friends.
That's miles. Yeah. That's wild to think. Yeah.
But now there's so many houses they're about to run out of road. So,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the traffic out there has gotten really really packed. I've noticed that over the years, and it looks like there's more coming. It seems like every time you look up, there's a new subdivision. How do you feel about that? I mean, you've watched that change. From growing up as one of just a few families out there. And we've had other Beatico guests on the show. Gary Stanga comes to mind. We've had several, and they talk about it just being a different community than it is today, where it's one of kind of the hottest places for new subdivisions and, new homes in the area. What are your thoughts on that and that evolution?
I'm glad that, people want to come to our community. We're not small town Mayberry anymore, that's for sure. But there's so many subdivisions. I feel like it's not the community it used to be as far as knowing everybody. I go to my church and I barely know anybody, and I've been there my whole life. And, as I've been traveling and meeting people in our subdivisions, there's nobody in the subdivision that I know. in some
Yeah,
cases, and it's just unbelievable.
that's
You don't
wild.
know your neighbors like you used to, and
Well, you mentioned that, and I think the same thing when you're in the grocery store. I live a couple blocks from Bonings, and I'm in there all the time, or even if I'm in Rouse's, and you still feel like you're in the old Winn-Dixie you grew up in. But when you look up, you don't
you
recognize
don't.
the people in the aisle next to
Right.
you. And
That's
the
right.
Ponchatoula we grew up in, and even more so probably the Beatico that you grew up in, you knew everybody. When I
Yeah.
worked at Hi-Ho and at Berryland Produce in the 90s, you knew 8 out of 10 faces that walked through the door.
Yeah.
So
Not
yeah,
now. I
no,
mean,
you're right.
it's not as, I don't think, I mean, there are neighbors that you can count on and, that's been there still.
Sure.
We all have those people. But then again, if you had an emergency, could you go to your neighbor? I think a lot
Yeah.
of people would say no, because they don't even know
Right.
them. They've never met
Right.
them. So
Well,
that's a
obviously,
drawback. Traffic is bad,
yeah,
schools, we don't have enough
absolutely.
room.
Yeah.
You just do the best you can. And it's just a
Well,
lot
speaking of
different.
schools, we're going to dig into all the great work you've done on the school board, and of course, I'm sure you want to update us on what's going on and coming up with the schools. But let's take a trip down memory lane first and talk about what your experience was as a student in Ponchatoula schools. I assume growing up where you did, you went to Champ Cooper before Ponchatoula High. But tell us about that experience, maybe who your friends were, who your teachers were, and kind of what y'all got into.
Well, my Champ Cooper was great small hometown then, and I
Hmm.
was pretty involved in school then at what we could be involved in, and basketball and the sports. I remember taking from Miss Hillary June Allen. Her daddy was our principal.
Yeah.
Mr. Hillary Bickford was our principal, and I remember taking Morse code from him at Champ Cooper, and I took piano lessons
Wow.
when I was young from Miss Carol Arnold, and so those
Hmm.
people were influential to me. But of course, Ponchatoula High School is, I loved Ponchatoula High. I was a Wavette, and I was very involved in a lot of different clubs.
Yeah. Now,
One of
Wavettes, don't you guys have, and we're going to circle back to your experience, but
okay,
isn't there a reunion of sorts coming up with the Wavettes and the cheerleaders and the
yes,
band?
yes.
When is that? Can you tell us some info about
It's
that?
a Thursday night. It's a
Okay.
Thursday night football game on October the 13th. And last year, well, not last year, but before COVID, the Wavette sponsor decided to do a fundraiser and bring back the alumni Wavettes. And we did a dance on the field, and it was great. Everybody loved it. So the other organizations, like the cheerleaders and the band and, the flags and all, wanted to do it. They wanted to do it too. So this year they teamed up, and we're having this big alumni return night. And
Hmm.
former cheerleaders are going to actually cheer with the cheerleaders the
Yeah.
first quarter. And then, the band alumni are going to perform with the band, and we are going to dance with the Wavettes. So it should be a great night.
That's so
It's October
cool.
the 13th, and looking forward to that. I haven't practiced but once, so I think I need to do a little more practice, but
Got to
it's
get
going to
those
be fun no
leg
matter
kicks
what.
going. Yeah, high kicks. But
No, no,
what's
no,
neat
no
is,
high kicks, no high
I mean, you
kicks.
can see all this gray in my beard, and it's been a while since I was at PHS. But I think anybody, no matter when they went there, my dad was Mr. PHS in 1960. I went to school there 35 years later, and people there now. You remember who the Wavettes were. You remember who the cheerleaders were. You remember who the drum major was in the band, and the quarterback. And it's just this common denominator. So when we hit this time of year, it's kind of magical to me when, not just because there's less humidity and heat in the air, but you're talking about, I guess now it's Thursday night lights some,
Yeah.
because they seem to be playing on Thursdays more often, but there is magic in Friday night lights. And so it's really neat to hear that those of you that participated, as Wavettes, as cheerleaders and band members and whatnot, are getting back out there, because I think it will be cool for the kids that do it now to watch you guys and see you all these years later. And
Yeah,
wow,
it's a
just
great
really neat.
tradition. It's a great tradition. I mean, we all
Yeah.
love Ponchatoula. If you went there, your heart is there. So it's
Yeah.
kind of fun to go back and continue
Well,
with
so tell us about the gang back then. Who are the other Wavettes, and who'd you go to high school with, and
Well,
who are the
my
teachers?
Wayback captain, I was co-captain, and then one
Uh
the
huh.
captain was Jerry Henson. Well, she was Jerry Powell. She's married to Jack
Yeah.
Henson. So she
Yeah.
was our captain. I'm still good friends with her. We have
That's
lunch,
great.
about once a month. And my
Very cool.
co-captain was Kim Cottrere.
Uh huh.
And so we talked to her pretty often. We had a great group. We had the most beautiful uniforms, but we used to wear those really pretty boots. like the
Yeah, I
man
remember the
jackets.
wave-up boots. That was a big deal. Yeah.
And so I stay friends with all my, I have one of my friends that I grew up, one of my best friends, Joanne Beecham was her name. She's married to
Hmm.
Ken Lang. Her and I are still very good friends, and we lived across the block from each other. And, we've still remained friends all these years. And so that's
Yeah,
history.
Joanne and Ken are great. I love them. They
Yeah.
have such a well-kept yard, and they're
Yeah,
just
I know it's
they're
beautiful.
beautiful home. They're great folks. I knew their kid, her kids growing up. Very cool, very neat. Well, were there any particular teachers that kind of stuck out or that were memorable to you when you were there? Because I find that PHS is one of my favorite topics to talk about with guests. Because in Ponchatoula, we're kind of a one school town. I mean, tonight we play North Shore in football. If you grow up in Slidell, you might have gone to Slidell or Salmon or North Shore. It's one town, three schools, or some towns have a big private school with a bunch of kids going there. But in Ponchatoula, now some kids trickle off to private school, but it's still a small minority. But for most of us, that was the only game in town, and we all kind of went through those hallowed halls. So whether it was Will Ed Butler or AJ Bacher or Virgil Allen or Lawrence Thompson, you name it, Cindy Foster, all the great principals that have come through today, people have kind of these common denominators. So who were the people from administrators to teachers, or who were kind of the icons of the era for you when you were at PHS?
Well, Mr. Bacher was my principal, but
Oh, what a
I'm not
hero.
finished with him. I think I'm not
Oh,
finished
yeah.
with him.
Well,
Okay,
I
so
knew
my
you. I know
ninth
y'all
grade
were very
science.
close. I remember
Yeah.
him walking you to my house and all throughout the neighborhood when you first ran for office, because he was a big supporter of your campaigns. And I'm sure we'll get to that. But I got to say, AJ Bacher, there's never been a better man in Ponchatoula. What a hero he was. So thanks for mentioning him. And I promise we'll get back to him.
Yeah.
But please do continue.
Well, I was going to say that my ninth grade science teacher was Ann Smith, who ended up being on the
On the
school
school
board
board
with me.
with you. Wow.
And
Yeah.
so
What a
I
sweet
loved Miss
lady.
Ann back then, and then I served with her as
Yeah.
both of us elected to the school board. So that was pretty amazing to do that. I still talk to her now. I miss her, working with her.
Yeah, I love
And
Miss
then,
Ann. She's a sweetheart. And wasn't her husband the mayor of Kentwood?
yeah, for many
Or
years he was
she
the
went
mayor.
on to serve with you on the school board, and I think she was a principal. And she
Yeah,
was close with Mr. Bacher, as I recall. I think I
yeah,
remember her telling me that he was a mentor of sorts to her. But my fond memory of her is when my wife and I went to Washington Mardi Gras one year, because I was a member of the crew, and she was up there, Miss Ann, through I guess the parish tourism board. But that was the year I proposed to Brandy, and so Miss Ann was around when we were kind of celebrating at the hotel bar. And what a sweet lady she is! I really think the world of her. So
yeah.
so she was one of your folks. That's cool. Who else was on the faculty?
Well, my 10th grade year, my biology teacher was Virgil Allen. And then, of
Coach
course,
Allen.
he became superintendent and all that. So,
Yeah, I was in his
it's
last
funny that I
graduating
had
class
those.
as principal. Yeah,
Well, let me
what
go
a
back
hero.
to Champ Cooper. Another one that
Okay.
I still have a relation with is Mr. Bill Simmons, who's married to Sandra Simmons.
Yeah,
And
whoa.
he was also a science teacher. So science was not I didn't like science. Okay. So, but Mr. Bill was wonderful, and I still, have a good relationship with him. He's a funny
Yeah,
guy. But there's been a lot of people.
very
But
cool.
I'm gonna move on to Mr. Bodker now. I loved him.
Yeah, tell us about
He was
Mr.
super
AJ.
nice. He worked so hard for me in all my campaigns. He
Right.
knocked a million doors for me and was one of my biggest supporters. Gave great advice. I really miss him a lot.
Yes,
He's he was
me too.
he made a lot of us better because he was
Right.
such a good mentor to a lot.
You're absolutely right, and even those of us that didn't have the privilege of attending school under him, because he was long retired when I got to PHS, but he was such a great mentor. I knew him through the Rotary Club and through his family, and he was just so great. My kind of adoptive pawpaw growing up was Winks Vineyard, who was an educator too, and they had worked together. But they used to go fishing, and every once in a while they'd bring us Rowdy Layrisson boys from next door, along, and it was just great life lessons in the boat, about how to live your life and how to be. So I'm
Hmm.
sure he had great insight for you on school board issues, and
Yeah,
how
sure
cool to
did.
have him. And I mean, how must that feel to have your childhood hero like that be your supporter? Because I remember, you're right. He went on every door. I mean, he would get out there on the hottest day, sweating with everybody else, And,
He did.
80 something years old, he would not stop. He would keep
Yeah.
knocking until y'all were done.
Yeah,
That must have
he
meant
was
so
great.
much to you.
It did. He was wonderful, and I mean, on election day too, he spent the whole day every election. So I'll miss him this time.
Yeah.
He would call, all day. We would call people and
Hmm.
encourage them to go vote. So yeah, we'll miss him, come November. But he was super great, and his family
Yeah.
is awesome to share him all these years with everybody because he was
Yeah.
kind of everybody's daddy,
Yeah.
So
No, you're right.
yeah.
He left behind great kids and grandkids and great grandkids. His great grandson Hudson and my little boy James are in the same class at Strawberry Castle now. They're pre-K, and the Bodker legacy carries on through his many great kids. And thank you for bringing him up. I smile every time I think of Mr. AJ. He was the best. Well, tell me this. Let's we're talking about PHS, the good old days. Let's talk about the next chapter in your life, because eventually we're going to get to your family, because you have so many distinctions. People know you as a school board member, but and soon to be president of the whole state school board, so, association. I want to hear about that. But I think of you first and foremost as a mama, and I don't know what's a bigger deal, to be the mother of a strawberry queen, which you are, or the mother of an All-American at LSU, which you also are. So we want to get to your kids and your life as a family woman now, but heading back to PHS, what happened after graduation? Where'd you go next, and kind of what was the next chapter?
Well, I actually went to a secretarial school, and that so you can take the civil service test and do all
Right.
that to get a job. And I got offered several jobs over in Baton Rouge, but I didn't want to go to Baton Rouge, so I ended up staying home and working in Hammond.
Cool.
Then I just, as I got a little bit older, I became a volunteer. Like my husband
Yeah.
calls me a professional volunteer because in the school board we're basically volunteering we don't get paid much.
Right.
But I started, the Baptist Young Women out in Beatty Cove. I did Girls in Action. I reenacted the Girl Scouts at Champ Cooper.
Oh, wow.
I did a lot over the years that it's sometimes when I think back, like, how did I do all that? And I loved it because I'm a service person.
Right.
I
Right.
feel like I'm a servant to help, whatever needs to be done, just volunteer. And
You definitely have a servant's heart. There's no doubt about that. And, I know other people recognize that. Kim Covington Core, speaking of, it takes one to know one, Kim, by the way, because you share this with Rose. But Kim says that she loves Miss Rose Dominguez. Thank you for all you do.
thank you, Kim. I appreciate you too. And your
Kim,
sweet
that's
baby.
really sweet of you. Thank you for watching the show. And of course, Kim, you are right. This brings to mind, folks, something I probably should have said at the top of the show, which is, if you have a comment, if you'd like to say something nice to Rose, as Kim has done, or if you have a question for her or me or whatever, feel free to leave a comment below. I'll do my best to get to them. As you saw at the beginning of the show, I'm kind of low tech, so I can definitely mess up and miss you, but I will do my best to include you, as we've done Kim here. So getting back, we're here with Rose Dominguez of the school board, and she's telling us about the good old days of PHS and then going into the workforce. And, you mentioned your husband. I mentioned your children. When did that happen? Because, you're known as such a great family woman. Like you said, Girl Scouts, PTA, you name it. You were involved in every activity. I mean, heck, you put a pole vault and set up in your yard for Josh. We think of you now as super mom to Lexi and Josh, but, tell us about kind of that, that whole love story that became this beautiful family that we now know.
Well, we started dating in high school. We ended up
Mhm.
dating about 10 years before we got married. We got married in
Wow.
1980.
Uh-huh.
And then we had several years later, like 5, 6 years later, we had the 2 kids. And I was right away very involved in their lives and went to everything. And I guess it kind of just followed me, and I continue to do that now. I go to so many activities, and I have some of my friends and constituents, as you say, who you're watching. I'm like, I'm watching everybody's kids. 'Cause I just love to go.
Right.
I love to participate and see what's happening in our schools. I decided actually to run for school board when they were still at Champ Cooper. I had an unsuccessful bid, but I felt like I did really well against the person that was running, that was a 30-year teacher veteran.
Yeah.
So then 8 years later, I decided to run again. But I had such a PTA force behind me because we did a lot at Champ Cooper. I did a lot when I was president out there, and then became the president of the district, which was 5 parishes, and just felt like it was a service to give back. and I've continued to do that. And now I serve on the Louisiana State School Board Association as a elected member here in Tangipahoa Parish. But,
well, and it's my understanding that you will become the president of the School Board Association. Is that right, on a statewide level?
Next month, I'm president-elect right now. I was vice president and then elected as president-elect. And then now I'll just step into the position next year at our convention.
And that's something that only a few women from around here have ever done. Is that correct? Tell me about how does that stack up historically? Because that's a really big honor.
Well, the Louisiana State School Board Association was founded in 1938, I'm pretty sure. And will be the third person from our parish to be honored to be the president. You're elected by the 600 plus board members from across the state. And it's been many, 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 many years since we've had anybody, and I'll be the third one. So.
I remember how proud my family was of Dad when he was elected Sheriff's Association president, but he only had to convince like 64 other sheriffs. Back then, New Orleans had 2, by the way, guys. I know my math seems funky, but he only had to, 60 something sheriffs to corral and get votes from. Like you said, school boards, it's like 600.
There's
a lot of
members.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And we have to run at our annual convention. And
that's
cool. And we have to campaign and everything just like you would for any other. So I'm honored to do it because I love it. And we do work hard for our schools across the state. Mm-hmm. We lobby in Washington with Congress to put priorities of money and education and lunchroom and all of that, and of course we lobby it locally, and we work hard to make a difference, and we really do. We have some great legislators in our area that I'm able to work with, and I've been proud to say we've accomplished a lot, and we work hard every day with that. I love that. I love Tangipahoa Parish School Board. I feel like I've accomplished a lot in my years here.
Yeah, no, well, you have. Well, let's talk about that, and I want to kick it off with a comment here. So Sharon Dominguez Schilling says that you're a great school board member. You're always supportive to every school and every event. And Sharon, you're so right. The events especially jumps out at me because you seem to me to be the everywhere school board member. You're the only one I know that seems to make every graduation from the elementary school to the high school, you name it. But like we were saying earlier, you'll be changing into football gear after this, or fan gear, and heading to the football game. And that's 4 years at a time. It's not just an election year thing for you. Like you said, you've been doing it since your kids, who are now adults themselves, married with kids and all that. You've been doing it since they were little kids. So what is it that drives you to kind of make it and get there everywhere? Because I find that's really exceptional.
I really enjoy just interacting with the people and and watching the kids. I love watching the children perform, whether it's athletics or sometimes music, or we have lots of band competitions and choirs. I try to go to it just because I feel like it's supportive, and I enjoy it as well. I just think that we need to give back, and I've always been one of those to do that. I try to write notes to people, and I have some little cards made up, and if somebody's pictures in the newspaper, I try to send them a note, and I've always done that. I'm still the snail mail kind of lady.
I know that. I've seen your workshop at your house. You've got, of course, that big room with all your stuff, but you have the most prolific note routine I've ever seen. We were joking earlier about how little you get paid as school board members, and my first thought when you mentioned that was, I doubt you even make enough to cover the postage and the stationery for all the notes that you send out and the clippings and laminations, and that you've really always been the queen bee of that. So that's
I love to get snail mail myself.
I do too.
What's amazing to me is now I will run across somebody that 15 years ago I sent a note to, and they remember and they thank me again. 15 years, 12 years, 10 years later. I just think that's important. It takes time. I mean, I don't do nearly as much as I used to do.
It's tough.
I mean, I used to cut out everything.
It's memorable.
Everything. I can't do it. It's too much. But I try to do the biggest important things and try to keep up. So I love that. I think that's a good service.
I think it's memorable because it's meaningful. It takes time. You can't do it without putting a little elbow grease into it, personal thought. And then the other thing is, in this era, so few people do it anymore. I just picked up my mail a little while ago, and it was junk mail. It's, this supermarket advertising this, piece of pot roast or whatever. And then 32 different companies you don't want to hear from trying to sell you something. And then of course, bills, but you're not really getting anything personal from other humans much anymore. So when it does come through, it really means a lot. Speaking of great humans coming through that mean a lot, Jane Corder White. Jane, how are you? She's got a quote, a comment here. She says, two of my favorite Tangipahoa parishioners. And she says that I'm correct. Rose, you are an everywhere leader. So Jane, thanks for having my back on that. We seem to agree. Speaking of favorite people, Jane's just one of the best around here. She's always been so supportive of me, and I really appreciate that. Clearly she feels the same way about you, Rose. Well, let me ask you this. Clearly you love what you do, or you wouldn't keep signing up to do it again, because it's not for the money. It's not for the public support, because it's a fairly thankless job. My guess is you got 4 parents or people complaining to you for every one that says something nice, even though you do a great job. It's just the nature of the beast. That's public service for one, and school board especially. But what is it that you love about this job that keeps you coming back, Rose?
Well, I think I make a difference. I think it's important that we have leaders in our community that look for the best outcomes to make everybody's lives better. Our community is only as good as we are. And
Amen.
I think by helping our children, helping our school system to be better is so important. I don't know that there's any other job that is as important. Being a teacher is someone that works hard to raise someone's child basically every day to make them better, because they're going to be our leaders. And it's kind of a thankless job to be a teacher. I love all our teachers. They work so hard. I think they're just not as, you hate to say they're taken advantage of, because they work hard. I think people just assume that their teacher's a miracle worker, and they're not.
You're right. They're underappreciated
to raise your children.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I've given a lot. I've learned a lot. I continue to learn every day what makes the job better, makes us succeed better.
Yeah.
And I just feel like I've made great strides and created, different, just to be a coach or a volunteer coach. We had no contracts for that, and I, created that and got that going so that we know who we're hiring to be a volunteer coach. And, I mean, there's many things. It's just too much to even go through.
Yeah.
I do have my paper. I have a running tablet of things that I have instigated or started.
Well, I'm glad you brought that, because I noticed you have those notes down there. You're definitely probably my best organized guest yet, in that you actually brought notes in preparation for today. Why don't you share with our viewers some of the things you've accomplished over the years? Because I don't think, certainly, as you mentioned, teachers are underappreciated. They're not getting their due. But the same could be said for those of you on the school board that are putting policies into place, like the coaching contract you mentioned, that are helping our community. So what are some things over the years that you've done in conjunction with your fellow members that you're really proud of?
Well, years back, before we started having all of the terrible issues with security, I recommended that we put the fencing in between the sidewalk and the buses. A lot of the schools didn't have that, and there's security, so we did that. At some of the schools, I encouraged them to revamp the carpool line, the way we pick up our kids, like at Tucker and over at Perrin and Champ Cooper. We added several areas to pick up. Of course, Champ Cooper is another story right now with our new building, but things to make it better. Those were things that I brought to the attention. Our cafeteria ladies were loading up cafeteria lunches to take to another school to satellite the lunches, and they didn't even have covers over where they back the van up to load the food. And so I'm like, that's ridiculous. If it's raining, they have to load in the rain. So we got that. We did a lot of playgrounds at our campuses. We did, these are just things that I brought to someone's attention, and that's how you kind of get things done. You bring to someone's attention.
But aren't these things that you can't bring to the attention to fix unless you're there, boots on the ground, to see it, right? And so getting back to the comment earlier about you being the everywhere leader, as Jane mentioned, You can't really do that unless you're there to see it.
Yeah.
You know, talk to the lunch ladies and say, hey, wait, what? You guys don't have a cover? You need that? Let's get it done. So that is it. Would you agree that's been kind of the key thing is
That's
being
it.
there
That's
in the
exactly
schools
right.
active?
Boots on the ground, as
Yeah.
they say, and seeing it. You know, we exterior doors. I saw in Champ Cooper and at Tucker. We changed a lot of that. They were so outdated, and the locks didn't have work. You know, change that. Bathrooms need revamping. We remodeled all the bathrooms at Tucker, all the bathrooms at Champ Cooper, just because I went and were there and saw
Yeah.
this needs to be done, fixed. A lot of complaints about how hot it was in the gym at Ponchatoula High. So I'm like, we need one of those big
Yeah.
fans. And we, eventually we got the big fan. I'm wishing we could have air conditioning, but that's a whole nother ballgame there.
Right.
But we got the big fan, and they say it does help even in the winter. And we redid the floor there. We redid the floor at Champ Cooper. I mean, I'm just trying to think off the top of my head.
Yeah, well, no, that's a lot of capital
There's been
improvement.
a lot of
Yeah.
things that I have actually been instrumental in helping to
Yeah.
get fixed, and maintenance is a big thing. There's a lot of extracurricular activities, encouraging them to do things in the classroom. Like we got the smart boards. We thought, get away from the chalkboard. Let's go.
Yeah,
smart
those are
boards.
great.
Technologies, that was something that we pushed way back. But of course, like you said, the board works together with the superintendent, and none of us are able to do anything on our own. Because we're one of 9, and
Right.
if you vote a certain way and you don't necessarily like it, I've never been one to be mad. I just move to the next vote, because you're never going to win or get everything you like. But we're one of 9, and we don't really have authority to do anything on our own. But if someone brings me, like people call me all the time about things, and I immediately go to the source and I try to fix it or get it done or push it through. And then I'm not one to argue on Facebook. I'm not going to comment on Facebook, because you're not going to solve a problem by interpreting someone's conversation on Facebook. But if I see someone write something, I am immediately going to call whoever's going to fix it. And I don't expect anybody to know I did it. I don't try to tell anybody I did it.
Right.
I just do it because that's the kind of person I am. And I love being a behind the scenes. Even though I like to be out and about and go to things, I like to be the person to fix things behind the scenes.
Sure. Well,
That's
look,
just how I
even
am.
though this little show's on Facebook, I'm a believer that these real problems need to be fixed in the real world, right?
Yeah.
All this social media sniping and complaining and negativity, it doesn't get us anywhere. So
No, it's pretty disheartening for our employees to see
I bet.
so many
I bet.
negative comments. It's very
And
disheartening.
they're working harder with less than ever. It's they have enough challenges. They don't need all that. I like Trisha Nicholas, another one of my favorite people. Hey, how are you? We had a blast, by the way, the other day at your place, out there at the Berry Barn on Club Deluxe. I was there for a birthday party last week, and I'm going to tell you what, if you liked her sweet shop in Ponchatoula, you're going to love the new setup with all the games and fun that they have out there. And I think, and Trisha, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that mini golf is now available. I think y'all just got that going. But she makes the key comment here. She says they're keyboard warriors. I love that. Yeah. And it's not Medal of Honor winners out here with real courage. It's people hiding behind a keyboard and a monitor. And she says, yeah, you bet they're not showing up to volunteer. True. So true. Truer words have never been spoken. But that's really neat. You've accomplished so much. We've been so fortunate to have you. I'm so glad the wisdom of AJ Bodker and all these other community leaders that approached you about running, had that idea, had your back, and thankfully you agreed to do it. But moving from the past to the future, what are your plans for the next 4 years? Because I understand you'll be term limited after this next term, so you're running for your last term. What do you have in mind for what you're going to accomplish in the coming years?
Well, one of my safety is one thing. We're still working on trying to fix the safety issues in our campuses. We have a lot of campuses that are not totally secure, and it's by no fault of now. It was the way buildings were built when they were built.
Right.
The outdoor hallways and stuff. So, that's a main focus that we have to worry about. My other thing is I feel like we need to, we do it, but we don't do it for all employees. But I think we should enact on campuses some of their professional days to be in a CPA class. I mean, not CPA, CPR class.
Yes, I love that
what's
idea.
going to happen with if there's an emergency, how would we? So everybody can benefit from taking that. And we did that back when I was doing PTA at Champ Cooper. We had a workshop and we called in Northos, and of course they always come. And they did the class with all of our teachers on campus back then. So I think that's important. That could be considered a professional development day. That maybe that would be something I would like to have implemented. Continuing with all these facilities. We have $100 million worth of properties, buildings going up right now, and it's very important that. And we did all that without new taxes as well. So. That was creative thinking in our finance department. They've done a great job, and Mr. Schnottelbach is a math genius, kind of, so to speak. But him and his team work together with the superintendent to figure out how we can do these things without taxing our people anymore. And that is moving forward. We need the buildings, so that's a goal to continue to do that. And of course, salaries, we worked hard to get those salaries up. We did the salary study. We increased. Yeah. We're still working on that. We want to continue. We've improved, and great financing there to, you never get enough money.
Right. No, you're right. But it's important because you have to compete with neighboring parishes. And, I love to hear that. My wife now works in the Tangi system after many years in Livingston. And I always joke, she's my sugar mama. I need her for my school board insurance and my kids. That's but she's a school counselor, not a teacher. But the same principle applies. These are highly educated people. They had to go get student loans, put themselves through school, and they work hard. And they need to be compensated so that they can live. None of them go into education expecting to get rich, and they won't. But we need to at least pay them a living wage. And the same goes for bus drivers and custodians and lunch ladies. And so I know you and your colleagues are working hard on that, and I applaud it.
I've always been a very strong support personnel. I mean, I know that. When I did PTA at Ponchatoula High and at Champ Cooper, those are the people you need. You have got to.
Absolutely.
If you're going to set up an event, you're going to call the janitor people or whoever to come and help you. And
absolutely.
I've always been so supportive, and I've always tried to do for them because that's been my heart. My grandmother was the manager at Champ Cooper's cafeteria for years and years, so I have a special place for all our. There's nobody that works harder than those cafeteria ladies.
I know my grandmother volunteered at the St. Joseph cafeteria, and I saw it. You're absolutely spot on, right? Well, I can't thank you enough. I promised you I'd get you out of here in time to get changed for that football game. Before we let you go, though, because speaking of football, I want to hear a little bit about Coach Josh Dominguez and his wife, former Queen Lexi Dominguez. Tell me about your kiddos, what they're up to, because I wasn't joking earlier. You really did. You raised a Strawberry Queen, you raised an All-American, but they're better people than they are, any career or stat or award. So tell us a little bit about your kids, your grandkids, and we'll kind of close on that happy note if you don't mind.
Great. Well, my daughter was first, Christina Alexis, her name. She's a nurse practitioner for North Oaks. She works as a family practitioner. And yes, she was the Strawberry Festival Queen in 2008, but she was also the Fair Queen, which is this weekend.
Oh, wow, that's true. Yeah.
Neat. So she went to do the fair competition because in her heart, she always wanted to be the Strawberry Queen. She knew that she wanted to do that. So we always went to the fair and did that. So she decided, I'm going to try for the Fair Queen. And then she ended up winning. And then we loved it. We traveled everywhere. And then, of course, that was when I was the Strawberry Festival chairman in 2004. So we traveled all over. And, of course, everybody loves the Strawberry Festival, no matter where you go in Louisiana. And so I almost felt like royalty, too, because I was the chairman. And they were like, wow, you're in the Strawberry Festival. So it was kind of like Strawberry Festival Fair Queen at the same time, and she did an excellent job.
Cool.
And she loved it as the Strawberry.
She was a great queen.
We had a great time supporting the festival.
She's a great nurse practitioner too. I know she's beloved by her patients and very popular. She and her husband Al are well liked. And what about Josh? He went off to great fame as an All-American at LSU, and now he's back coaching here. Tell us about him.
Yeah, we're very fortunate to have both of these young adults in our parish. We really are. And not just because they're mine, but because they're very supportive of the community as well. But Josh was only a year behind Lexi, and Joshua Dominguez, and he is the coach at Ponchatoula High School. He's the head track coach for the girls, and he is head football coach for the boys freshman team. Mm-hmm. And his wife Alex is she is a therapy hand. She works for Happy Hands Therapy, and she actually sees our students in her.
Oh,
her
cool.
clinic. So she does a great job, and we have 2 little grandchildren, Josh and Alex do, and Bo is 4, and Bailey is just 13, about 13 months.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're doing great. They're both at Strawberry Castle with your kids.
I know. I see Bo and my boy. They're both 4. I see them tearing it up over there.
Lexi loves her job. Josh loves. They both, it's
That's
a good
great.
team for parents. And Josh is really good. He loves Ponchatoula High, working there. So.
Well, you're right. We're very fortunate that they came back after going off to school in Baton Rouge. Each of them, they're talented, and I think what they are for you. It's they are the best example of the great job that you and your colleagues, the teachers, everybody's done. I mean, they are proof of the success that our local educational system can have, because they're highly educated, they're highly effective, they've got great hearts. And I can't think of a better advertisement for you as a mom and a school board member than those 2 kids. So
yeah, they're very good. We had a blast following Josh pole vaulting all over the country.
Oh yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong here. Not only was he an All-American at LSU, wasn't he the runner-up to the national champion his senior year? Am I right about that?
Sure
Second
was.
in the country. Wow.
Second in the country for pole vaulting for LSU.
That's amazing.
It was amazing. We had a really good time, great bonding, family times, and traveling the country. But I'm really happy that they both, like you said, they both came back home, and they're both happy in their jobs, and they're very service-minded, volunteer young adults, because they're always helping and doing. It's kind of what you learn, and I think that's what we all need to instill in all of our children and our community. Support your community; it supports you. So,
amen to that. Well, thank you, Rose, for sharing your time with us. I'm going to let you go so you can make that game. To our viewers, thank you for your patience with my little snafu getting started and for sticking with us the whole time. We'll be back here next week here with the Ponchatoula Live Show. Until then, have a great week. Take care.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.